Hello, everyone. Welcome to this development tea. And today we have Jeffrey presenting his project. Hold on. All right. So this is an update of Jeffrey's presentation from spring. So if you have any comments, questions, feel free to raise your, actually just unmute yourself and ask your question while Jeffrey is presenting. And everything is going to be recorded today. But without further ado, let's yield the floor to our presenter, Jeffrey, for today.
All right. Thanks, Steve, for the great organizing this seminar. And good morning, everybody. And good afternoon, folks. I guess it depends on where you are, right? Thanks for stopping by today's GW-IIEP Development webinar. I'm Jeffrey Cole, an economic PhD candidate in George Washington University. So it's my pleasure to be here to share with you some updates of my ongoing project entitled Is Distance the Soul of Beauty? Evidence of how open border policy changes political ideology in Taiwan. Okay, so since I already pitched, this is my second time to pitch this topic, and I realized a couple of days ago that some of you might be the new audience. But at the same time, some of the people have already joined the previous seminar. So I'm thinking of a way to accommodate the two different target audiences. So why don't we start with some of the updates and summarize what I have done, which is different from the previous talk. So first of all, remember the main methodology I'm using in this project is the non-parametric regression discontinuity design. So as gathering some of the feedback from other conferences and seminars, I further run the robustness check on the different set of the threshold. Okay, I mean the previous model. And secondly, I review many of the literature on the tourism economics, and I believe that there's another way to construct a better proxy for the Chinese tourist exposure. So if you compare the previous abstract and the current abstract, I think this is the main part for today. I'm going to introduce one of the index I borrow from the tourism economic literature to construct an index to identify the exposure of the Chinese tourists in the period of the policy shock. More so, I organized and combined the annual government publication in Taiwan, and this is called Annual Survey Report on Visitors' Expenditure and Trends in Taiwan. So this is a publication that published by the Tourism Bureau in Taiwan, and it documents the relative visits of the tourists in each of the tourism attraction in Taiwan. So follow this, I create another index called CTE, is the Chinese tourist exposure across the different years. And so now I'm using it as a new rounding variable in my main empirical model. Okay, so let's shift the gear back to the original paper. So first of all, I would like to discuss a little bit of my research motivation. So the idea, as I said last time, is actually coming from a daily conversation. I just want to give a special shout out to Eric, but he's not here, for the inspiration of the idea. I remember during the days when we first met our first year classes, he once asked me, why do the trade agreement across the Taiwan Strait even push Taiwan further away? And in reality, if you take a look of the legal documents of the bilateral trade agreement across the strait, in fact, Chinese government has made a huge concession.
Hey, Jeffrey, sorry, you're digressing a lot. You're talking about a lot of different things. I just don't remember what your paper is. Can you remind us in one sentence, like what are you looking at? What is it?
Yeah. So here is it. So
this is now a standard presentation you're doing here.
Yeah. So it's this one. Does the economic integration bring in the political convergence? I'm looking at the the influx of the Chinese tourists, the shock of the influx of the Chinese tourists coming to Taiwan, and how does that affect the political ideologies and voting results during that period. So I compare the result before the shock, that's in 2008, and in 2016. So I don't know if that answered the question. I'm going to explore. I'm going to walk you through a little bit of the whole background of the paper. Okay. So the question, like the question that I mentioned that Eric asked me, let me ponder for a little bit while, because A, I have never thought of it from the opposite angle. B, shouldn't conventional economic theory tell us that economic integration be the stepstone of the political convergence? So people tend to believe that economic integration is easier for the political integration. So if the conflict regions, like the two countries, they have the tensions or conflicts, they tend to build up some of the form of the economic cooperation before they move into the political coordination. Right, so I started to do some of the research of the case of the Taiwan, and I tried to identify when did the political ideologies of the Taiwanese shift from in favor of the China to against. And much to my surprise, the reverse of the friendliness and friendliness to China actually started from the days that the trade agreement came into effect, as well as the long restricted tourists from China show up. On the other hand, we all know that there are many conflict regions in the world, right? So I hope that this project could provide some of the potential solutions or alternative opinions of those countries when they deal with the conflicts or they have the tension with their neighboring country. So the central question, like go back to Professor Je-Uei's question, the central question is, does the FTA or does the trade, the tourism trading services bring in the political convergence? This is the question I'm going to ask. Okay, so the goal here, I'm trying to identify the open border policy as part of the bilateral trade agreement across the strait. Does more economic gains by welcoming more tourists, rendering the unification more favorable, or does it push Taiwan further away from China? And the methodologies in a nutshell. So I create an index, like I said, I create an index of the exposure of the Chinese tourists across the electoral district in Taiwan. So in spring, the banana model we use the travel time to the major airport as a proxy. But now I'm using another way that I borrow from the tourism economics paper that to construct the exposure of the tourist. Okay, and a little bit of the preview of my results. So comparing the two different RD estimation, we found that in 2016, the post-shock results, the boundary between the tourist exposed and non-tourist exposed area are more significant. And some of the contribution I believe that I have right now is, this is the first project to the best of my knowledge, I believe that I combine the political data to the tourism data. And this is the first example that people use the FTA across the Taiwanese Straits to, you could provide another different angle to assess the effectiveness of the bilateral trade agreement. Okay, And then let's move to a little bit of the history part of the today. So I call this the cliff notes. So it means that this is a very short version of why right now there's a wide political divergence across the Taiwan Strait. So first of all,
Jeffrey, like,
yeah,
you don't have a time to do that. This is something you do in a paper. What you just need to say is one bullet point and say, well, there is like this enmity between the two regions, and we're going to exploit that. You really need to move faster and focus on what you really do, you know?
Okay. Okay. So should I keep this one?
I mean, if I want that, I can go on Wikipedia. What I care about, I want to give you some detail, some feedback on your identification, result, and all that. You're not going to go for these bullet points. It's going to take forever.
Okay, yeah, I thought it's okay. Yeah, sure. So okay, so maybe in the short version, is that you know it's been a long time that two side of the straits are not talk to each other, so as the citizens. So the shock is very special, unique in some sense. That's it. Okay, and then so to provide some of the political spectrum right now in modern Taiwan. So we are in the bipartisan world, right? So I have the two major party right now. One is pro independence and one is for China. Okay, so the left hand side, the DPP here, which is right now the incumbent party. People tend to believe that well, not people tend to believe, that's like the origin of the DPP is chaired by a leading group of the Taiwanese independence movement. So the Green Party, the DPP right now we are looking at actually represent the against China ideology. Okay, and then on the other hand, on the right hand side, the KMT is more conservative and the right-wing party in Taiwan, and they believe that should the political system have changed one day in China, that they are going to be willing to be part of China once again. So let's take a look of what is the...
Jeffrey?
Yeah.
I think something like this, what you want to do is you want to have an American flag and a Chinese flag, something like that, so that people see left and right. And also in the future, I'm quite sure in your tables, you're going to use DPP and KMT. What you want to do is like, you can call it like pro-China, anti-China or something to simplify in tables. And lastly, I want to know more about the electoral system. You're talking about two parties. Is it, is it a system like in the US? Is it a system like in the UK? Is it a system like France, like Germany? Like, are you focusing on presidential elections?
Yeah, presidential elections. Yeah. Because the foreign policy, it's more hinges on the presidential election.
Okay, so then how does a presidential election work in Taiwan?
It's just the direct election. It's not like in UK. It's more like in the US. It's more like in US, but there's no electoral college in US.
So you have one round of that. You have only one round. That's
exactly. So everybody's vote counts. As long as you are older than 18 years old, I think it's 20 or 18. Yeah, it's 20 or 18, and you consider to be legal citizens that have the ballot. And then the cycle is 4 years, and you could vote. And the first time the direct presidential election started from 1996. So since then, we already have, I believe, it's 6 times election, and both of the parties took the office in a different period. So now we are looking at 2008 to 2016, which is the period that the right-wing pro-China party was in the office. But now the pro-US, or like you could say pro-independence party right now are in the office. So as you could see, the differences of the party who is incumbent right now, the political ideology shift, right? And that is the case that we are going to explore today. So this is the result for the territories of the parties before and after the shock. So in 2008, the KMT percentage, okay, so the pro-China party, the blue party, the pro-China party's candidate.
Yeah, Jeffrey, like this is exactly what I was talking about. Like I already forgot what is KMT and I already forgot what is DPP. So, you know, instead of using blue, at least use red or something, you know, so that people can remember, or use a flag, the China flag or something, you know.
I see. This is a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would try to adjust it. Yeah. Yeah. So you see from like the differences between 2008 and 2016. You know, like I have the numbers here. So the KMT candidates, mind you, has got the 7.65 million votes, and the total votes for the Taiwanese citizens, it's about 15 million. So it's like more than half of the votes was voting to the pro-China party in 2008. After the shock in 2016, things has swerved a lot. So in 2016, the pro-China party, KMT, got beaten by pro-independent party, around 3 million and around 30% of the voting share. So as you can see from the right-hand side of the graph here, at that presidential election, the DPP won more than 30% of the voting share. So another thing it's worthwhile to pay attention to is, could you identify, like open to the audience, could you identify where is the main regions that switch the sides? So as you could see, last time I already told you that the Northwest and the Midwest part of the Taiwan are the groups that have the biggest change in their party recognition or their political ideology, right? So it's this part and this part.
Jeffrey, I know nothing about Taiwan. When you have a map like this, add a third map at the beginning where you show me, for example, like the urbanization rate or the main cities of a country in 2008, before that. So that, you know, you can, if you were seeing a map for the US, like the blue and the red, that's very strongly correlated with urbanization. So I want to know, like, to what extent this is correlated with economic development, this shift or anything. So.
So you're saying that I should add the name of the cities or like labels?
Yeah, you should have, no, you should have a third map here where you show me economic development or urbanization rate at this district level or territories level. And you should also add a star with the main airport because if that's your identification later on, you have to already lay the ground for that, you know?
Yeah. And that's the argument I have last time. Yeah. So so the main airports in Taiwan, it's in the in this part around here. So I will pinpoint next time.
Okay.
Yep. And this is just another perspective of the comparison between the before shock election and the after shock election. So in 2000.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do you have the map of the population? Because this is a majority vote, right? This is a majority vote that it's going to decide the president. So it's not like the US to be an electoral vote. So each region is important. So populous region should be more important in your research. So if let's say that all these regions that you showed that has a small population and one of them has a large population and they change the parties, then that's going to determine the president, right? So do you have a map of that, or can you talk about like which areas are more populous?
No, no, yeah, but this is a really good point. So since we are not like the U.S. system, we are not in the electoral college system. So each of the regions, they have the different votes. That's your point, right?
Right. What I mean is that like if you can like change the opinion of the like in the region that it's more populous to change the parties, so you can define the result of the election, or you can change the result of the election. So it's better for the parties to target the more populous areas rather than like other places. That's the point I have, or at least I can wait to see like if you control for the population in the regions in your regression.
I don't this time, but I'm trying to merge the data. I'm trying to merge the data. I will. This is a good point. Yeah, I'll try to. Yeah, since we are not like the electoral college, I thought this is just the way. I thought this is just the way to give you an idea of what's the differences between those two elections. You know, like in 2008, those are the districts that are won by pro-China party. However, most of those districts are switched to another party in 2016. And this kind of the shift we never see in the history of the Taiwan before. And that's the reason why I showed you the either territories like the winning parties or the sharing the vote margin, the share differences. Yeah, but maybe this one could clarify your question a little bit, right? So, well, but I still don't control I still don't control the population of each of the county, and the county, the way that people administrated the districts, electoral districts, it's not according to the population, and it's not according to the economic development either. So yeah, so that's a good point. Yeah. So why don't we go back to the to the presentation here. So the opacities here means, you know, like if the color is darker means that party win more in that region. So in 2008, you could see that the east part of the Taiwan and the south part of the Taiwan, they're traditional like what's that, non-swing states, if using US terms, non-swing counties or swing districts part of the Taiwan. So the east part of the Taiwan, they usually vote for the KMT, and the southern part of the Taiwan usually is it's the DPP's territory. So the biggest change that we see from those two different presidential elections is from the northern part of the Taiwan and the middle part of the Taiwan. Okay, so now you see they flipped, right, from the blue party to the green party. Okay, and at the same time, another data that I would like to share with you is that the influx of the long-restricted Chinese tourists. So as I said in the history before, you know, like very short history. Before then, the biggest group of the tourists influxing to Taiwan, coming to Taiwan, is Japan, and this is because the historical issues. But after 2008, starting from 2011, the Chinese tourists, the number of the Chinese tourists pick up. Okay, and this is the policy shock that we are staring right now. Okay, so the navy blue line shows the trend of the arrival of the Chinese tourists. Okay, and the burgundy red line is the Japanese tourists. So you see, there's an intersection in around like 2009. So Chinese tourists surpass the traditional biggest tourists that is coming from Japan.
Hey, Jeffrey, that's very nice. But I have China in red and bold, you know, so that we see China more than everything else, you know.
So sorry, yeah, I
If you
didn't.
can have, you should have China in red and in bold.
Oh, okay, red.
Thick, you should use a thick line. You really want to highlight this, you know.
I see. I see. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So there's
Yep.
another graph in the share of the tourists, right? So this is the proportion of the tourists among all the tourist port that pool that come into Taiwan. And as you can see, at the same around of time, at 2009, the proportion of the Chinese tourists has surpassed the Japanese tourists. Okay, and a little bit of the this table will be in the paper. So this is the policies, the timetable of the policy that are organized from the newspaper, from the announcement of the government. So as you can see, starting from 2011, this is the first officially announced the tourist group coming from China, and those tourists could only be the citizens that reside in those three cities in China, which is Beijing, Shanghai, and Xiamen. And then uh, in like very short period of the time, within 4 years, the cities that are allowed to travel to Taiwan grows a lot. So starting from 3 to 47 around that time. And this is except for the mini three links. Like there are a couple of the small cities in the coastal area of the China. They could have using another way to come to Taiwan. So this is just give you an idea that the shock is big. The shock is you never see this before. So this is a historically huge shock to a Taiwanese citizen.
Jeff, can I ask a
Yeah.
question? You mentioned earlier that election happens every 4 years, right? Which means in 2012 there should also be a presidential election.
Right.
And from your earlier graphs, I don't get the sense that are you using the election result for 2012 as well?
No.
And if not, is there a reason for not using that data?
I eventually I will do so. Eventually I will expand it all the analysis to the all sequence of the presidential election. But now I just, I feel like compare 2008 and 2016 right now will be the most efficient way for me to describe this story. But yeah, your point is well taken. I will like consider all of the electoral results since 1996 to 2020. I'm actually working on the most recent one, 2020 right now, trying to merge it and trying to create the same stuff right now. But that's a good point to take. I could told you that in short that in 2012 the pro-China party is still winning, right? So that means in 2012 the policy that they announced, they exercise the policy that they exercised in their first term, probably got a positive feedback from the citizens. And there is like a huge declination starting from 2011 or 2012, since their beginning of their second term. Okay, but yeah, so I will consider all of them, but like collecting the electoral data, especially in a small district, it's not easy. So each of them have the central election committee. So I have to collect from each of the county, and I have to locate the district and to combine it. And yeah, so I'm working on the 2020 right now, but I'm thinking that since I have all the codes, all the scripts, this could be done, I think, like faster, relatively faster.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so go back to the literature review. So about the politics and trade. So David Dorn, and Gordon Hansen's, their paper will be the first one that come into our mind. right? So they use the TV viewership.
Jeffrey, this is again a very weird presentation. I thought we already did the literature to some extent, and you know, it's already noon. I think at this point you really need to focus on your results. You know, I mean, it's for you. You know, like you don't want us to discuss the other papers. You want us to discuss your paper.
Oh, okay, yeah. So yeah, but in the beginning, I already make a little bit of a disclaimer. Some of the people didn't participate in the previous talk, so that's the reason why I feel like go over some of the literature will be helpful for them. But if that's the case, yeah, maybe we could just move to like the data part or the model part, if that's okay for you. You know, like yeah. So
That's for you. You need to receive feedback on what you do, not what other people do.
I'm sorry. Pardon me. Can you?
You need to receive feedback on what you do, not what other people do. I don't care about the other papers. I care about your paper. If I sign up, if I take some time to listen to your paper, not the other papers.
I see. I see. Yeah. So well, yeah. So just okay. Yeah. So let me just briefly go over my electoral data. As I said, this is the data resources I have. Okay, and the observations I have right now is the district level. So it's a lower one level of the county level. So in each of the election, we will have 368 districts across the Taiwan. The timing of the election, the circle of the election is 4 years. Okay, and the outcome variables that majorly looking at one that I could measure the shift of the political ideology is the winning margin, right? Like which party win, which party lose. So I'm using what? I'm using the KMT party's vote minus the DPP party's vote. One is in the level and one is in the percentage share. Okay, and the geographical data, I calculated the travel time was using
Hey, Jeffrey, so you're using 2008 and your shock is which year, 2009?
My shock is after 2008. So it's gradually, right? Remember, there's a bunch of they opened up the cities in China gradually. So it's not a one-time shock. It's a sequential.
Yeah. So do you have data before 2008 to look at the parallel trends?
Yeah, I do. I do have the. I think the earliest data for the tourists will be.
No, election-wise.
Election-wise will be 1996. That will be the oldest one I could get.
Okay, and do you also? I still don't understand what is your what your main variable of interest is going to be.
Yeah, so if we take a look of the RD, that would be it. So this is the sharp RD design I have. So I'm looking at the cutoff of the travel time. So I separate those regions into two groups. In some sense, one is considered to be more Chinese tourist exposure. One is considered to be the areas that without the tourist. So then I estimate the coefficient, on the just the RD, the coefficient of the curve. If you approach to the cutoff from the left-hand side and you approach the cutoff from the right-hand side, do they have the statistically significant differences of the two regions? That's the point I'm looking at. Okay, and then the previous result I have is I'm using the different local polynomial models to identify them, to identify the discontinuity. And then this is just a snapshot, a glimpse of the result. Either I can use the linear model, or I can use the quadratic or cubic or quartic model. So the result I have is if you compare with 2008 to 2016.
Je-Uei, sorry.
Yeah.
I don't understand again, like, why do we care about distance to the airport? First, you told us there's only one airport, which is Taipei. Unless, I mean, you have to show us a map of these airports, okay? So then there's Taipei.
so that is the vanilla case. That's the easiest one. So that is
okay.
the proxy, the original proxy I have.
Okay, and then like, why do I care about the airport? Like people fly to Taipei,
right?
But then they go to the main cultural sites.
Right.
And the main cultural sites, you know them from the non-Chinese tourists before 2008. So you know where the Japanese were going, you know where the Americans were going. But instead of having Japanese tourists, now in 2008 you get Chinese tourists. So I thought your identification would be a difference in difference, looking at proximity to cultural sites in 2008 multiplied by post 2008, you know, and this is where you expect a bigger change in local politics.
Yes. But the thing is, I could only know like in average, where's the the relative visits of the tourists for all tourists in Taiwan. So that looks like this. That's the ideas looks like this. So I have the relative visits of the tourists that in Taiwan, but I don't know which group of the tourists specifically. So for example, I don't know Japanese tourists.
But it
doesn't matter.
What is good is actually identify the location of this. And you know that post 2008, these locations are going to receive more Chinese people.
Right. So this is one of the adjustment for this time's talk. So yeah, so maybe why don't we just talk a little bit of what is this index? All right, so that may be clarify the idea a little bit. So I call this one CTE, the Chinese Tourist Exposure Formula, and this is borrowed from the tourism economic literature. So like I said here, the distance to Taipei is just okay, and it's been a lot of questions on this one, because a lot of people will say that the distance to the airport will have a endogenous problem, and the airport area usually is more wealthy area. Yes, and now if it took the better way to construct the tourist exposure, I'm using this formula that's borrowed from the from literature. So what do I have? The data I have is the each year's Chinese tourist. Okay, so this are gonna be my main running variable. So these are going to be the variable that replace the distance to major airport. So CTE, KIT, I means the district I, T means the year, and K means how many tourist attraction I'm going to look into. So for example, if I only take into of the top 3 tourist attraction in Taiwan, so I will find which is the top one, which is the second one, which is the third one. And I will have the data for the relative visits of the tourists per 100 people to that particular location. So that is how I construct. So CTE is equal to the yearly Chinese tourist. So this is the aggregate one, yearly Chinese tourists times the relative visits of that specific region. So J is the tourist attraction divided by the distance between district I, so it's the electoral district, to that particular tourist attraction. So for example, if I looking at 2016's data, if I using one of the city in the middle part of the Taiwan, let's call Miaoli City. Okay, so it's somewhere here in the map. Okay, so the top three tourist attraction, I can't count the night market because there are too many night market in Taiwan. sorry, I should translate this one into English. Apologize for that. But the first one I can't count it. So if I except for the night market, the first three tourist attractions, for example, here it's the Taipei 101, National Palace Museum, and Chiang Kai-shek Memorial. So I could use the coordinates of these three tourist attractions, like here, and calculate each of the counties, their tourist exposure. So go back to the formula once again. Distance here is actually the travel time. The travel time, the driving travel time to the tourist attraction. And it's weighted by the relative visits of the tourists across the year. And then you could have this as the index of the tourist exposure. I do believe that this one is a purely exogenous variable of across the district in Taiwan. So
what you're doing is a market access variable, but
yes,
you're adding a lot of information that's not necessary. I mean, first, like this is really dependent on your specification here. So the power of distance is equal to 1. So you assume that distance has a linear effect. However, I don't know if Taiwan is big, I don't know if Taiwan is small. Maybe Taiwan is small enough that distance doesn't matter for where tourists decide to go. Or maybe the transportation costs are low enough because there's a very good train system.
Yes.
The difference is a simpler specification. And so I don't fully understand why you go into this complicated market access specification.
Well, because I think about the DID. I think about the DID. One is if we take a look at the electoral result, it's really hard to prove the parallel assumption. I think that's one of the reasons I have a little bit of hesitate of the differences in differences specification. Secondly is I cannot specify out, particularly for the Chinese tourists. I can only use their market penetration index, or I could use a tourist exposure index alternatively to identify, to believe that those regions are more exposed to the Chinese tourists, and some of the regions are not. So of course, like you talk about the distance, you talk about the travel time, that is not the uniform distribution. I talk about this too. So maybe in the denominator here, instead of just divided by the traveling time I from j, maybe we could use like standardized, maybe using like zip distribution, or use normal distribution to trace out the real real travel time distance of the tourists. In some sense, it's like now this method to construct the exposure, we believe that the tourists will decrease, the number of the tourists will decrease as long as the distance increase. And their correlation are just, like very simple linear way. But maybe that's not the case. Maybe that's not the case. And this will be, like this is well cited in tourism economic literature as well. Like the tourists tend to only locate it in a proximity around the tourist attraction. So there might be some of the regions that are more easily to encounter the tourists, and there are some of the regions are not so easily to encounter the tourists, even though their distance is the same. But in order to find out, to solve this, the only thing we need is to test what is the real travel distance of the in the data. So we could use the bootstrap, or we can use either way, or we can use guess, or like just like try and error, find out the different method of the distance. Then we could still have a robust CTE. Okay, and then this is just
sorry, Jeff. Can I just follow up Professor Jetwak's question a little bit? So you were mentioning that the reason why you did not choose the ID strategy was because it's hard to justify the parallel trend. But I was wondering, of course, it will be hard to have parallel trend. But I was wondering if you have earlier year election data. You mentioned that the earliest you can go to is 1996, right?
Yeah.
So what about if you were to do, like, let's say the change of election result from in each district from 1996 to 2000? So the assumption there would, if you find the difference between, let's say, the vote share of KMT and DPP in each of these districts, the assumption there would be, had there not been this trade shock, then each district would sort of stick to their original political leaning, right? If I vote DPP, I still vote DPP. If I vote KMT, I will still vote KMT. So that in that way, maybe have you checked to? I know you're working on the data, but I was wondering if it's possible in the data that, or at least anecdotally based on your experience, whether that is true to a certain extent, that before this trade shock, the district that always voted for DPP is sort of sticking to their political leaning, and the same for KMT. If that's the truth, I think that maybe the parallel trend with voting might be true. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I think you are right, and this like this point, you know either Remy's point and your point has been brought up by the other people before. I don't know, to be honest with you, I started with this project by using the RD, using the regression discontinuity. The idea originally is trying to find out the boundary between, to identify the existence of the boundary between non-tourist exposure area and tourist exposure area. But maybe we need to step back a little bit to find out whether this is the causality that really shows up there. Yeah, so yeah, I think Devin Trott, last time I talked to him, he brought out the similar point. As for the data, for the electoral data, I think the accessibility of the data is not the problem. But yeah, but I don't know. I never tried. I didn't try the DID, so I can't just make up the. I don't know what's going to be the predictive results of the DID, but well, I guess that's doable, and if that's the case, maybe I should run the OLS first and then run the DID and then run the RD. That would probably be the best pattern to show the result of this project.
Jeffrey, can I ask you a question about exposure variable? Like you said that it's exogenous, right? So I'm trying to see like how it's not like, let's say that you have the lag of the variables. How you justify that it's not correlated with the current variables, like Chinese tourists.
So T here, remember that T, so remember that, so this is just the 1 year period. I'm not sure I answer, I'm not sure like if I understand your question correctly. So this is just 1 year, but you could still aggregate up the different years.
T-1 is the year 2008 and T is the year 2006.
Okay, so if we using 2016, if we're using 2016's electoral result, these are going to be the relative visit of each of the tourist attractions in 2015. The reason is because the presidential election in Taiwan usually started from the early year. It's usually like in January or in February. So in order to consider that, in order to consider like the shock effect, you need to consider the previous years, right? So if I have the election in 2016, this are going to be the statistics in 2015. And this is just the one period of the index. You could, 1 year period of the index, you could expand it to a different year. For example, we know that the cycle of the political cycle is 4 years, right? So what I have right now in my mind is I could use not only T minus 1. So means that there's another sigma here. I could have T minus 2, T minus 2, T minus 3, T minus 3. So I could encounter all of the tourist exposure within this political cycle. But the selection will be another problem, right? So like which year should be your cutoff? Like you should use 1 year's data, you should use 2 years data, or you should use 3 years data, or you should consider all of the data that in your political cycle. I don't know. So this is just give you the example of if I'm using 2008 electoral result, T is equal to 2008. The visits, the statistic I'm looking at is the previous year in 2000, which means in 2007's Chinese tourists, annual statistic of the Chinese tourists, total account of them. Each of the tourist attractions relative count of the 100 tourists.
Shouldn't you use T minus 1 on the left-hand side? 50. Because
here?
Yeah, because it's
so this is just
right. So it's what each region, let's say, that it's exposed in the previous years, or as you said, like previous periods. So still, I'm trying to see like how you have T on the left-hand side.
Yeah. Okay. So each of the observation I, right, each of the district electoral district I will have the votes, and that is counted at T, right? So I just want to make this one, it's consistent here, right? So why IT? So if I only look at 2008 or any particular year of the election, I just want to make sure that my outcome variable was impacted by the previous year's tourist exposure. That's it.
Okay.
So this is not a typo. This is just I intentionally do it. So like I said, this is just one year period. But I could have T minus 2. I could have T minus 3. And then once again, the problem is how do we choose the model? And why do we choose 2 years or 3 years? Maybe we need to go back to the literature for that. And I also have this kind of questions when I try to find out like which tourist attraction what is the top ranked tourist attraction I supposed to choose? I should choose the top 5, I should choose top 3, or I should choose the top 1. Okay, and just give you a little bit of the results of once I change the rounding variable to CTE, the result magically becomes even stronger. So if you compare the previous result, we use the rounding variable is the distance to the Taipei International Airport. That some of the models that you cannot show in 2008, they are insignificant. That means the boundary between non-tourist exposure and tourist exposure, it doesn't exist. But whereas if we switch to the market penetration indicator or the tourist exposure indicator, the result becomes stronger. No matter which model I use, I can see the pattern that no matter which local polynomial I choose, I could see that the insignificant in 2008 and significant in 2016. Okay, so I don't know if this give you like is this convince you? Does this convince you a little bit or not? But uh, yeah, I admit that there are a lot of the improvement I need to do. First of all, is to expand the data to all to expand the time horizon to all the data I have, starting from 1996 to 2020, and then to find out a better way to figure out the best indicator, and maybe to run the DID or like the simple OS model for this to just identify the most straightforward pattern instead of just looking for the boundary uh, in the beginning, and control the population and the income. That's all I have right now for today. Thank you for the question, and I'm eager to know some of the feedback. So please feel free to speak up or just let me know. Thank you all for the question.
Thank you, Jeff, for your presentation, and thank you everyone for for joining our presentation today. And since it's almost close to our concluding time, I'm just gonna wrap it up. And if you have any, like Jeff said, if you have any additional comments, feel free to send it to him by email, which is listed there. If you're interested in finding more about the details of his paper, you can find it on a link here as well. Thank you all for coming, and we'll talk to you later.
Hey, Steve, can we still have the section right now, or like maybe
Yeah,
people want to chat a little bit?
People are free to go, but this is I don't think there's any other event after us, so we don't need to leave this room Zoom immediately.
So thanks, Jeffrey. I do still have a question about like your.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one thing that I didn't find time to ask is like the distance. You said that how you measure your distance? Is it by the time, right? The time of the
time. Yeah, it's traveling time, driving traveling time. Specific.
The travel time is something that it's kind of like, I don't know. I haven't thought about it myself, and I haven't read the literature about it. So I'm kind of like just asking without having any background on how to measure that. Because using the different modes of transportation, that would affect like your distance variable, like the travel time, right? For example,
Sorry, what's the transportation again?
The mode of transportation. Let's say that I travel with
different mode of the transportation. Okay.
It will be faster. If I travel with car, of course it will be cheaper but longer. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So how you incorporate that, like that, for example, like if I'm a Chinese tourist, I came to the international airport of Taiwan. I don't know how it is there, and then I'm going to take another flight domestically to visit the like the places that are really popular, right? So about the timing and the distance, it wouldn't be that much because I'm taking the plane. Although if I used to drive, that would be much longer. So how you kind of having like controlling for this?
Okay, so maybe I should point out some of the stylus factors. So traveling by a plane within a Taiwanese island, it's not very common. So most of the tourists, either they take the train or they take the tour bus. So tour bus is basically just a car and driving on the highway, right? Mm-hmm. So your point is well taken. It's well taken, but there's no plan. There's no plan like commercially you can fly. Well, maybe from like Taipei to Kaohsiung, there are some of them, but not very common for people to fly from Taipei to Taiwan directly.
Mhm.
people will usually choose the train or the tour bus. Okay, so if this is the concern, maybe I could I could calculate the travel time by taking the train and travel time by driving.
Exactly. Or you can do it, I don't know how much observation you have, or you can do it for two groups, like those traveling by train or those traveling by cars, or having an idea like how it's going to be important. Maybe it's not at important at all, but maybe it is. So this is what
No,
I
no, I think this is a very I think this is a very good point. Um,
no, I mean like about the time of travel, maybe. Nah, I mean like it's going to define your threshold as well, because I saw in the beginning you had the threshold of the distance time. It was 290 minutes, if I
right.
remember correctly. So you can it would affect that actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and the reason why I choose 290, that's because traditionally people driving from the northern part to the southern part, that's considered to be the 1 day driving in Taiwan. So I know it's funny because it's relatively short in terms of the American standard, right? So that's only about like
And one
4 and 5 hours, but
like
yeah, but that's the norm that for the truck driver in Taiwan if
okay,
they
but
consider the 1 day work. Yeah,
but
go ahead.
is it possible for the tourists to rent a car there in Taiwan?
Yeah, and so rent a car, so driving will be your only way, right?
Yeah, but driving will be your only way, but you can take a bus or you can drive your car. So these are two different things that I have in mind. Because I know in Iran, you cannot just like travel there and rent a car. It's not that easy, right? Unless you have to have like some sort of like driving license that's internationally accepted and you have to register for that. So it's kind of like a process that tourists usually don't take. Instead, they're going to rent a taxi or they're going to rent like, I don't know, go with a bus. I don't know about Taiwan. Like if I go there, can I drive?
Uh, it depends on which country you're from. I don't know if Iran, we have the reciprocal treatment for that or not. Some of the country, if you have
In
your
your case, you have to think about China, not Iran or US or any place else. If somebody from China comes to Taiwan, they can ride a car or they have to take a bus to go somewhere or take a train. Like these are the mode of transportation that my point is that you have to be careful because your question is about like the Chinese tourists, not like Iranian tourists or US tourists or any other tourists, right?
right.
So if they cannot drive a car, that's going to make your life more simple because they have to take a train or they have to take a
If they cannot, they will usually the tourist package for the Chinese when the bilateral trade agreement came into effect at that time is they have a tourist agency that help them to organize all the traveling during the stay in Taiwan.
Mhm.
So if that's the case, like when they arrive in Taipei, somebody will go to the international airport to pick them up and to get into the groups and then to start in the tour. So that's something that the big picture I have right now in my mind. I believe that the driving time is a good measurement for the tourist exposure. If you consider the count of the relative visits, the location, and you weighted all of them, and then I don't know, yeah, but I could see if my coding, if my the API I use,
Mhm.
they have this kind of the services, like the trend or the public transportation. Could I also calculate that as my travel time?
Yeah. All right. Perfect. Thanks a lot, Jeffrey.
You like it or like to be
Yeah, it
honest?
was great. It was great. Thanks. Actually, I really like it. I think this is going to be very complicated. It's a very complicated topic, if you ask me. And yeah, it's super hard, but it's at the end it's going to be very interesting.
Well, the thing for the DID, the thing for the DID, it's not because I just don't like the DID. It's just I feel I don't have two different groups. So there's no two different groups.
Yeah, it is like the Chinese tourists and the other tourists.
No, but you're using continuous treatment essentially. It's not that there is technically speaking a control group. Everyone is treated, but to a different degree.
But it's okay. It's still like I'm doing like the paper that you mentioned. The ADH paper is doing the same thing. So everybody is treated, but with different degrees, which is the dosage treatment instead of having 0-1 as the treated control and the treated group. So yeah, Steven is right. Like you can do it. It's still the way that instead of RD, you can use DID, and it's going to. Yeah, I agree. And this exposure that you did is going to do it for you, like the exposure variable that you have.
Yeah, so the the DID, okay, so what I have right now, okay, DID is delta voting margin, okay, and then delta CIE and shock variable binary. That's it, right? And all bunch of the controls.
Yeah. I mean, you can still make use of this this tourist exposure measure that you've spent a lot of time constructing. I think what Remy mentioned was also like, I think it was, so if you are worried about, so when you mentioned like the initial motivation for you to not use DID, I thought it was a good idea because I remember from the very two maps you showed us that in 2008, a lot of the districts that were a little bit grayish, which means that they don't have a very strong leaning. Sorry, it's the other way around. A lot of the district that had a light blue, which means like KMT win the majority in that district, but only by a little bit, right? And then they start to turn gray. So they start to lean towards DPP direction. And the same, you sort of see that pattern actually across Taiwan. Like the darker blue has become less blue. So when you were mentioning that maybe you're not going to see a parallel trend, I thought that was a good argument. But maybe you could try the change in the voting share. So take this difference and take a further difference of this difference compared to the 2004 difference. You see what I mean? So if there is a further, let's say, darkening of blue somewhere, that would be picked up, or darkening of green somewhere, that would be picked up by further differencing out, the vote share of KMT minus DPP in 2008, further minus the vote share difference in 2004. So then the identification assumption is, had there not been this trade shock,
wouldn't the voting share be the difference?
Yeah, the voting share difference would be the same. So that's essentially, it will be your identification assumption. Well, that's the story you're pushing, right? That's the story you're telling us, which is this exposure to tourists is really driving a lot of the change in political leaning in the election. So I think, if you do it like that, if you manage to show like a relatively stable pre-trend before the 2016 election.
Let's say huge if.
I think that's very convincing, like if before this trade shock, people sort of just stick to their political leaning. If I vote DPP, I just always vote DPP. And if I vote KMT, I always vote KMT. Then after this trade shock, then I start to have new experience. Then I change my political leaning. Yeah. I previously voted for KMT. I start to now vote for DPP, sorry.
Guys, I have to run.
Yeah, thank you.
But
yeah,
just
thanks,
a quick note about like this, the idea that Steven is mentioning. you might try to go and read the literature about shift share design. I don't know if you're familiar with that literature, but
No,
it's going to.
what's that? Say that again.
It's kind of like the literature that the strategy that they use in ADH, like the author Don and Hans, if I remember the names correctly.
What's the name again? What's design?
Shift share design.
I still don't get it. Like, can you type it in the type it in the chat
Yeah.
room or?
Let me type it somewhere. Oops. Da, 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 da. Or yeah, Bartek instruments.
Yeah, Bartek instrument. Yeah, so this is a little bit inspired by the Bartek instrument as well.
About the growth, and this is what I found.
Shift
Like,
share design.
it's really good. Like it's going to show you like how to, I mean, control for the pre-trends and the things. So it's really helpful if you have time to read about it. It's very fairly new compared to Bartek instrument. It's kind of like the same idea, but in a way, it's going to control for the endogeneity of the problems. So it has the both in a way, but I think it's the same. Read it and we can discuss it later if you want, because I'm doing the same thing. Anyway, guys, I have to run. I have to meet Remy in 10 minutes. So
Good luck.
recording, you know that, right?
No, I know. I am just mean like good luck with your presentation.
Oh yeah.
No progress update.
No, I'm not presenting anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's in my committee, so.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, go ahead. See you around.
Yeah, see you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, Steve, thank you. I mean, yeah, thanks a lot for the opportunity. I feel I'm really, like blessed to have the chance to talk about this within our department for 2 times.
Yeah.
Yeah,
An interesting topic. If you are able to
that's a big
if you are able to find result that